Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. And here with us today is Cathy Skinner, and she seems to have serendipitously gotten into the field of medicine and technology, medtech. Cathy, tell us your story a little bit so we know how you came into this field.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's an incredible story. Thank you so much for letting me be here. And I'll share some tidbits with you and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But um, I come from a background where my first career was coaching college women's volleyball. And you're going to say, wait, college volleyball to medical device? It's the same skill set being an entrepreneur as a collegiate coach. So I spent 10 years coaching college women's volleyball at institutions like Fordham University and Princeton University. And based in Minnesota, and there's a small college here called Augsburg University. And so working with women, working with athletes, helping them understand their athletic career was a wonderful time for me. But after 10 years, I felt like I needed to do something different. So at that point, my own father had been diagnosed with cancer, and sadly, he passed away. And so I was in a place in my life where I wanted to go from collegiate volleyball coaching into another type of business. And I literally thought I had to put my coaching career aside. But through my master's program, I came across something called coaching for well-being. And then I saw my niche where I could hang on to my experience as a collegiate coach, hang on to my experience working with athletes, and understanding how important physical activity is in improving someone's health. So I went from college coaching to launching my first company, which really was focused on cancer exercise. So I took my dad's cancer journey and my collegiate coaching and moved into that sphere first and coached cancer patients for 10 years. So I fell in love working in the cancer space with cancer patients and cancer survivors. I had an opportunity to start a company called The Art of Well. And through The Art of Well, I met with cancer patients face-to-face in their homes or at fitness studios or at Pilates studios. And it was a way to work in the cancer community with a research-based exercise protocol that was launched by the American College of Sports Medicine, originated by a woman named Katie Schmitz, who is the queen of cancer exercise and really is a pioneer in this field. And she trained me and trained others in this field to look at the cancer journey as a continuum and think about cancer patients being chronic conditions, patients with chronic conditions that needed to be managed over time. And physical activity, research shows in the cancer space that patients can rebuild muscle mass, they can build bone density, they can manage their sleep and their digestion and their stress. And for some hormone and insulin-driven cancers, they can actually reduce the recurrence of disease. So I found this field to be incredibly fulfilling. I felt like it was a sacred space where I was face-to-face with patients who were asking life and meaningful questions. I really had a front row seat to how patients were really doing because they were talking to me and to their peers in an exercise setting that wasn't in front of their doctors and it wasn't in front of their nurses. And they were really sharing what's going on with them. And while you think, if I'm leading a cancer exercise class, you might walk by and say, oh, it just looks like a regular exercise class. Well, no, the reality is I'm the queen of modifications. And what that means is people, let's say Nadia has lymphedema because of lymph node resection. And so I know that she's wearing a compression sleeve. And so we have to do something about that. I know that Larry has a colostomy bag, so he won't be able to do some of the abdominal work. I know that Bob has neuropathy in his hands and his feet, so I have to make sure that he maintains his balance. And so while you might walk by my exercise class and go, oh, looks like a regular, has BOSU balls, stability balls, free weights, what we're really doing is specifying unique movements that are ideally situated for each of the cancer patients that participate in the class. And you would think, wow, a bunch of people who have cancer, that sounds really sad. And I can tell you for a fact, we laughed way more than we cried. as we were doing this particular class, and would form a community. And not only could I be the queen of modifications and help people throughout the class, but they would start talking to each other, and then 60 minutes would go by, class was done, and they're like, wait, we're done? I'm like, yep, you did it. And they would have a sense of accomplishment and a sense of pride, and they would start to see their bodies change. And they were, even if they could just be distracted for an hour out of their week and feel like they were in a community, that was incredibly valuable to them. So that's the cancer exercise journey, and that morphs itself into this medical device field next.
I can see that this was of tremendous value to the patients, being in this very positive environment where they could share, you could feel their pain, they could see each other's challenges, as well as the little joys and getting stronger. How did it change your life in the process?
Gosh, how did it change my life? Working with these cancer patients really felt like a gift. It was a sacred space. I had a front row seat to people going through life change that was life or death. And they really were self-evaluating, and I provided me a chance to listen and to learn. And I was in a position to become a repository of knowledge, so that when I worked with 400 cancer patients face to face over the span of 10 years. And it impacted my life because I was able to hear stories of patients. And then as I met new clients and started working with new survivors, then if they had questions, I could remember what was shared with me previously, not diagnose, but make a recommendation or encourage someone to check out a resource or to follow up with a physician. So it was a really meaningful time in my life as well. And the thing that derailed it and put a pause on it was actually COVID. And it became too difficult to continue the classes virtually. And so that the company started to dissipate.
Wow. And then how did you get to med tech, diagnosis and other things? What was the journey like? What kind of technologies?
Yeah. So while working face-to-face with cancer patients and doing cancer exercise was really meaningful, it was limited by what I could physically do. And even at my peak of working with cancer patients on a weekly basis, I could only meet with 40 patients face-to-face. So back in 2015, I started to have this idea of what if we took cancer exercise and cancer nutrition and we put it into an app, a digital health platform. And so that's where my next company called Thrivors was born. And that was a company that I put a lot of time and energy into, had a business partner that had the technology chops to do the digital health platform. We were fortunate in that we received a grant from the National Cancer Institute for an SBIR phase 1. And we were able to test our technology platform in the hands of breast cancer patients and provide them with exercise and nutrition to improve their bone health. And it was a very successful trial. We received investment dollars from a group out of San Francisco. We had a couple of contracts with pharma. And while we had many successes, sadly, we weren't able to get to our customers soon enough. And so if we were to have a conversation about go-to-market strategy and selling into healthcare, it took us too long to figure out who was our customer and who was going to buy. And then when we finally figured that out, two things happened. One, COVID hit. And two, one of the contracts that we had been working on for 8 months fell through. And then it was just too difficult to repurpose and resell this particular project that we had been spending 8 months building toward. And this is more on the entrepreneur side. It was an interesting journey to launch Thrivors in 2015 and say, oh, we have an app, we have a technology with cancer exercise and cancer nutrition, and take it to healthcare systems. And for administrators of hospitals to say, oh, our patients will never use an app.
Yeah.
And then in 2021, when I had to close the company, the word was, oh, there's too much, it's saturated. It's too much of a niche product. Cancer exercise is too narrow when, there's other apps out there that anybody could use, and cancer patients can use that as well. So that's more of a difficult entrepreneur's journey. And it was a way to transition from doing face-to-face through the art of well and attempting to have a bigger reach and scope and impact by leveraging technology to go into the lives of cancer patients.
Entrepreneurship is always hard, and especially the first time when you actually understand different facets of the business. Yeah. So what led you to your current adventure, NXgenPort?
So my current adventure, NXgenPort, is part of my origin story. When I was working face-to-face with cancer patients, there was a woman I was meeting with who came to me after a doctor's appointment and said, the drug that's fighting my cancer is damaging my heart.
Oh.
And I was looking at her going, oh my gosh, she had an implanted chemotherapy port in her chest, under her skin. And I was thinking, why couldn't we know sooner that she was suffering these consequences? And that was back in 2016. And that was before that technology was small enough that remote patient monitoring existed, CPT codes existed. That was before hospital at home models were a part of the conversation. So I always knew that it was a good idea to somehow leverage this implanted device that really didn't have any technology inside of it, but to use it as a monitoring and a tracking device. And now the climate around AI and machine learning and gathering data on a physiological level and marrying that with the data that exists in electronic medical records, really with the goal of improving patient experience and outcomes and improving workflow and managing costs.
Yeah, I think the time is right, because for the first time, people have a much better understanding of how these IoT devices at the edge, which means in this case, the human body, can gather information, bring it together and marry it with the cloud, where you have a lot of learning that's from the past and make sense out of it, make recommendations. So what kind of recommendations or what kind of inferences does your system do, and how can it help the patient?
So right now, our vision for NXgenPort is to measure changes in blood cell counts, heart function, and vitals, all from a device that's implanted in the body. And the unique strategy is that the chemotherapy port has been implanted in the body for decades. So we're leveraging a technology framework that is already a standard of care. It's already reimbursed, it's already surgically implanted, it's already familiar in the healthcare space as well as in the general population. So by measuring changes in blood cell counts, such as red blood cells and the 5-part white blood cell differential, that are the key metrics physicians use to see early signs of infection, specifically low white blood cell counts called neutropenia. And 50% of cancer patients undergoing treatment suffer from low white blood cell counts. 20 to 30% of those folks get something called febrile neutropenia, which is a level of infection that lands them in the hospital. And if a patient goes to the hospital, they delay their cancer treatment, they suffer from more side effects, and actually they have a 10% increased risk of death by not continuing on the regimen and the pacing of their treatment.
Having seen my own friends go through cancer, I can understand and empathize with what you're saying. Have you done any kind of validation to see if the methodology you're going to use, the kind of data you have, that they correlate and you will be able to use it in clinical settings?
Oh, absolutely. So we've done several layers of testing of the device on the bench and in animal models, specifically in swine. And what we're seeing is that our device is able to capture images of blood cells, and then our machine learning algorithm is able to recognize those cells based on their known size and composition and count them to be able to see measures and trends about where the blood cell count is going. So that's the technical testing we've done. And we are going to be coupling the blood cell counts with changes in heart function and vitals, such as body temperature, heart rate. And that creates a data package that physicians already use in their regular workflow to make decisions about early signs of infection. And another key element is readiness for next treatment. So current methods and standard of care, a cancer patient gets a chemo treatment, is unmonitored on a cellular level for up to 2 to 4 weeks. Then they have to drive to clinic, get their blood tested. And if their blood counts are good, they get their next chemo. If their blood counts are off, they get sent home. So they don't sit with the doctor, they don't sit with the nurse, they don't get an infusion. So clinical efficiency is one of our primary drivers. Not only the benefit of the patient to know how they're doing in terms of their infection risk, but assessing their readiness for next chemo. And then everyone on the care team knows what's coming and they can plan ahead. And if accounts are off, the patient could get growth factor. They could get a blood transfusion. They could have their appointment rescheduled so that the clinical efficiency occurs, and to the best of the ability, they stay on course of their treatment.
I was wondering, some of the work you're doing today and the work you've done in the past, such as on cancer exercise, could be educational, could help the families and the patients themselves to understand and not get scared or worried, but be more practical.
Yeah, so thinking about what does a patient need and what would a patient like to know? As I shared earlier, I've worked with 400 cancer patients face to face. And if we were to survey them about the information they would like to receive from their smart chemotherapy port, we're going to get 400 different answers. So it's a very personalized experience. So as a company, we're committed to do very robust market research to make sure that the information that's going to the patient and their caregiver and their family members is the information that would be most beneficial for that person. Not to demean it, but in some ways, in my mind, I think of choosing your own adventure. There might be a way to do a pre-screen of the patient where they get to choose what information they want that would be most meaningful to them, because the last thing we want to do is create more stress, more anxiety, more fear, because there's already so much mental and emotional anxiety and tension around the cancer diagnosis. So we have a good understanding based on interviews with many physicians and care teams and nurses about the data they want to see. And as a company, we're holding very close to the data points and the workflow that are already used in clinical decision-making and clinical protocols. We know that workflow and work demand and work stress in healthcare is a serious problem. And our intention is not to enter in with a smart port and create data exhaust or create fatigue or another button or another dashboard, but really fall in line through an API into electronic medical records to give the physicians that unique data point that they already use. But the special sauce beneath that data point is that there's a longitudinal data set that backs it up.
I know it's so much technology and making it useful to your end customers, in this case, the medical professionals, as well as the patient and their family, must be quite challenging.
There's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah. And is there something you can do to help patients even after the treatment, or are you already working on those kinds of things too?
So as much as I am excited about having a smart chemotherapy port and a software for managed patient services and we have a predictive model that assesses risk of a patient's likelihood of getting neutropenia, which is a wonderful addition to our company. I want to get back to the place where we're actually serving cancer patients in their home through diagnosis into survivorship and into a part of their lives that is no longer focused on cancer, supporting them with exercise and nutrition and mental health services. So there's kind of a common thread in my story of exercise, volleyball, coaching, cancer patients, face-to-face services, technology-enabled services, AI predictive models, and really coming full circle to providing patients and their loved ones with a wraparound service to help them get through the challenges of this cancer journey and into survivorship as wholly as they can, with as minimal adverse events and as minimal side effects as possible.
If you were to advise young people or anybody in transition in their careers on how to do the kind of things you're doing, what would you tell them? Where should they begin? Because it's so vast, the kind of things that people have to do today. And the world is changing all around us with technology such as generative AI. How would you go about helping people to be the kind of person you have been in terms of learning all these technologies?
Well, I have had the opportunity to experience many things. And when I think about how did I get here and why am I here, I go back to my dad's personal story, his journey through cancer. That's my driver, my motivator. At the same time, if you are considering launching something, whether it's in healthcare or fintech or construction or library science, I don't know where you want to go, but I always encourage people who are thinking about ideas to link it to a personal experience, because you have your why, you have a leg to stand on when investors say, well, why are you doing this? And then you can say, I have lived this. This is my journey, and I've seen a gap, and I think there can be a better way. And this is why I'm stepping up to make it happen. So I would anchor it in a personal mission or a personal conviction that will help get you out of bed every day, give you the endurance that you need. And back to exercise and nutrition. I'm in this journey, entrepreneurship, for the long haul. So I sleep well, I exercise every day, I eat a healthy meal, because I don't want to get to the end of the journey. And if I succeed or I fail and I don't have my health, then what's the point?
You know, often we love to hear stories of success, how somebody went from 0 to 10 million in like 6 months. But that's too simplistic. There are so many other challenges along the way. What have you learned from your successes, as well as what have you learned from your failures in the past, as the world sees it?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So I would consider myself a serial entrepreneur, and having launched 3 different companies related to oncology. And I would consider my first company a success, even though it was just me and a cottage industry, but I served hundreds and hundreds of patients. And I feel like I was fortunate enough to make an impact on many people's lives. And it was the origin story of the idea I had for NXgenPort. So I count that as very valuable. My failure was in my second company, Thrivors. It had a lot of milestones. We got a grant, we got funding from VCs, we got contracts from pharma, but we didn't get to a business model soon enough, something that could be replicated with KPIs, that was measurable, that we could anchor into and do over and over and over again. And that was an incredibly valuable lesson. The win of the art of well and understanding the value of patient centricity, and then the failure or the lack of winning at Thrivors really has anchored me into this next company of making sure we're working toward measurable milestones, that we know what the KPIs are in the industry, who's going to buy from us, how much are we going to charge, what does it mean for CMS. So there's lots of layers around the business metrics that I had to learn the hard way. And we had learned them, we just were too late to the game. So the other thing that I do on a personal level is I count myself as very resilient. And so I have a setback, I make sure I get outside and walk it off, or I ride my bike. I don't drink alcohol if I'm really unhappy or had a very bad day. I feed myself something good, and I put myself to bed and wake up the next day and try again. So I have a resilience routine that I found to be very effective, and a lot of it is self-forgiveness, and then taking a step back and a perspective, and looking for other pathways forward. And that has worked well for me. And I would encourage others to come up with their own resilience routine.
In order to make NXgenPort successful, you would need a very complex team. It can't
Yes,
be just medical professionals. You need
correct.
medical professionals, doctors, nurses. You would also need people who may know how to make devices, software people, AI people. How did you go about creating such a team?
Oh, so remember how I used to be a volleyball coach? One of the primary jobs for a volleyball coach is recruiting. So on my team, because I am the non-technical founder, I am the hunter gatherer. So I am out looking for athletes. Same thing as recruits. I'm looking for machine learning engineers, optical engineers. We have an incredibly active advisory board with physicians, people who've launched medical device companies before, people who've successfully exited medical device companies and had big wins. My co-founder, Dr. Roseanne Welcher, has 25 years of experience in companion diagnostics and cancer. She's taken 50 products through the FDA, and she holds 16 patents. And while she was top of her game in a corporate setting, when she heard about NXgenPort, she decided to leave that and join me in launching this venture. I also was able to find a gentleman named Kelly Christian, who has spent 30 years taking medical device products to market, and he holds 30 patents specifically in chemotherapy ports. So I've been really fortunate to find these great, we'll call them athletes, to join our team, and as well as leveraging MedTech Innovator, which is a program we've been involved in this year. 1,900 companies applied. We're part of the top 61. We feel very privileged. We participated in Mayo Clinic Platform Accelerate, which allowed us to build a predictive model around neutropenia risk. We're an accelerator called mHub. So there's these programs, and there's these people, and then different engineering firms that are helping us build out in areas that we don't have that expertise. So I'm going to stick to my theme of coaching and say it's been a very exciting journey recruiting people that are good humans, great expertise, hardworking, and have a passion because they all have some type of a cancer story.
I'm looking at it from the patient side and the families. There's
Yeah,
so much phobia around new technologies. Of course, everything we do now has some technology involved, whether it's
correct.
the medical tests or the chemo, radiation, everything is technologically driven. Still, there's a lot of concern. What can help to reduce that concern, and how can you make it much more, much easier? How can we humanize technology for use in healing in general?
How do we humanize technology? That's a big question. I think it starts with the founder or the team having a personal connection to the disease state, and that affords a level of empathy. I also think that's hiring engineering firms or marketing firms, anyone who also has human-centered design, understanding the value of that. And then it's really spending time with patients. I had mentioned a commitment we have to doing market research to understand what does a patient really want to know about the data coming out of the port. And again, we're leveraging something that's already socially acceptable. Ports have been used for decades. And so to say we're taking a port and then making it smart is not a big jump, because we can equate it to the telephone. Used to have to dial it up, and now you've got an iPhone. So we're making that technology jump, and that has been very easy for any person on the street to understand the value of what we're doing. So I think it's really staying close to the voice of the customer and empathetic to the needs of the healthcare team, knowing they're spread really thin. And then also mindful of who's paying, which is the insurance company. And they're trying to mitigate costs. They're trying to retain their members. We're offering them a novel data package that can point toward assessment of risk. And then their resources can be spent on those who are more at risk, while those who are less at risk can continue on their journey. There's just so many layers for us to be connected to different voices and needs.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey, Cathy. It is so amazing. In fact, you're the first company and the first individual who's working in medtech that I'm talking to on this video blog series. And
Wow.
It's incredibly hard. And thank you for sharing your personal journey as well. To everyone out here who's listening, this is exactly why I'm here, to learn with each other. It's not like I'm an expert. There's so much AI can do. There's so much technology can do. And we have an obligation to make technology safer, easier to use, and in a very human way. So thanks again. And I look forward to hearing from you when you have a successful story in terms of, high customer adoption and using it, so that we all suffer a little less in future.
Thank you so much. This has been a great time. I appreciate it.